This episode of The Price of Football is sponsored by Proton Mail. Proton Mail is the world's largest secure email service designed to protect user privacy and security. Proton Mail ensures unparalleled email privacy through end-to-end encryption, which secures messages so only the intended recipient can read them. Even Proton Mail itself cannot access or decrypt your emails, guaranteeing zero access to your data.
Using Proton Mail means that the only two people who can see any emails I send are me and the person I've sent it to. So it provides me with protection against breaches and surveillance, safeguards my emails from hacking, unauthorized access, and government surveillance, and ensures all my communications remain private. I can easily transfer emails, calendars, and contacts from other providers with Proton Mail's user-friendly migration tool. And as part of the Proton ecosystem, Proton Mail integrates with Proton Drive, VPN, Docs, and Pass, which helps me to reduce my reliance on big tech and safeguard my personal information.
Tired of worrying about email security? Protect your messages with Proton Mail's end-to-end encryption. Go to proton.me/priceoffootball or click the link in the description to sign up now with a 38% discount. This episode of The Price of Football is supported by International Sports Convention 2025, which is taking place on March the 19th and 20th at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. More than 1,000 delegates and 100 speakers will be attending the event, and they will be covering a huge range of topics, from sponsorship and fan engagement to governance and integrity. Founded in 2009, International Sports Convention is the meeting place for the business of sport and has been for the last 16 years.
And there's a special treat for those lucky enough to attend the 2025 edition. The two of us will also be appearing. We'll be having a chat about football finance and governance in front of a live audience. You can book your place now at a special early offer price by going to internationalsportsconvention.com. But don't delay, that special early offer price is only available until the 20th of February.
Book your place now for International Sports Convention 2025 at Spurs Stadium on the 19th and 20th of March by going to internationalsportsconvention.com, and hopefully we'll see you there.
It's 2025, a new year and the best time to turn your great idea into a business. Shopify is how you're going to make it happen. Let me tell you how. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all your channels and create shoppable posts. Established in 2025. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. All lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/promo.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, we're not a football pod, but we have to face up to the elephant in the room. We have to mention it and get it out of the way, Kieran. So let's just discuss it and move on. That 1-1 draw between Palace and Brighton Ladies. We both got away with it there. That's fine, Kieran, isn't it?
Yeah, we were down to 10 men. You scored a bit of an unlucky own goal, but yeah, honours even, and we move on to another day.
Yeah, I don't think you were down to 10 men, Kieran, will you? You weren't down to 10 men, were you?
That is true. That is very true. Yes.
Let's point that out before we get letters from our irate listeners. You were down to 10 women. If you'd been down another 3 off, you'd have been down to 7. That would have been.
We were discussing my favourite Disney film before the show started, and you seemed to think it was going to be Snow White. I don't know why. But...
It's just not. it's not every day of the week you get a 9-goal swing in the goal difference between two clubs. But anyway, I said that it slightly took the fun out, as I had to tell a lot of. I was supposed to be going to AFC Wimbledon v Bradford on Saturday, but boiler engineer issues, which we will be covering again in a moment, meant I had to meet them after the game. So obviously quite a few of the lads with us were Palace fans. And I'm going, no, we can't say anything about this result, hilarious though it is, until 4:00 on Sunday afternoon. And then we can fill our boots.
Yes. My inbox has been... I know many Palace fans through you and otherwise. Yeah, you've been very gracious, actually. You're too busy laughing to be mean.
No. I always think that graciousness is the worst possible thing you can do to people. That really annoys them. Either not mention it or just be really, really grown up about it, and it infuriates people. I mean, the name Hinchelwood is an important one at Crystal Palace. So even part of me in the first half, thought, put someone next to him, poor little sod. What bizarre tactics are you playing, young German manager? You've got a tiny little boy who has to walk around in the shower to get wet, facing up to these galumphing Nottingham Forest midfield players who couldn't believe their luck. It's questions day, Kieran.
It is.
I'd like to think that was the last mention, but I suspect there will be
not
ways of crowbarring in. It's questions day, but just to reassure our listeners, we will be covering the transfer market in full on Thursday's show, the transfer window closings. This is Monday. It's still rather bizarrely open till 11:00 tonight. And it looks like one of the things we will be discussing about the transfer window, Kieran, is that if the stories are true and Ben Chilwell is joining Palace on loan, then a reserve left-back will become our highest player ever till the end of the season. Given the wages Chelsea are paying, apparently the one stumbling block is the eye-watering amount of money that Ben Chilwell is getting in wages from Chelsea. So we'll be discussing that and many other things, I imagine. He's also the 12th Chelsea player we've had on loan, I think, in the last 5 seasons, which is a bit concerning, especially because you can only have 2 a season, so I don't know what's going on.
Yes.
You'll be getting a couple of goalkeepers, I imagine, Kieran, so you might try playing 3 in the same game. That could help.
Yes.
All I'm saying, Kieran, is Chris Woods doesn't look like a footballer, does he? I mean, he's a glorious throwback, but people who look like that shouldn't be getting hat-tricks against a glamorous, media-lovey team like Brighton are, Kieran. It's just...
He used to play for Brighton.
Did he?
Yeah, when he was 18. Yeah. I remember him playing for us in League One. So, yeah, good luck to him. He's a really good guy. And it was one of those horrible things. He was in my fantasy team.
Oh, my God.
Talk about once we knew we'd lost, I was actually sort of hoping he would get a couple more assists and a goal. You've got to be pragmatic about these things.
Were you, Kieran? You were hoping that he would score more goals against your team, were you? Because you're... Well, I'm afraid to say, Kieran, so many people of my acquaintance said, well, Kieran will be fine. He probably had some money on 7-0.
Not 7, but yes. I did okay.
Well, talking of fantasy teams, Kieran, Kieran Fulop as our first question, or Kieran Fulop, by the way it's spelled, by the good things. And Kieran says, last year you covered the story that members of Westlife and Boyzone were close to becoming the faces of Chorley FC. Did that actually happen in the end? And if so, or if not, how are the club's finances looking now?
I'll answer the second question first in terms of Chorley Town. They broke even in 2023, but this is where things start to get a bit intriguing. They only had £20 in the bank at the end of the season, and they were owed £186,000 from another group company. So that sent the old spidey senses a tingling. Having read some articles in the newspapers, Shane Lynch, Keith Duffy and Brian McFadden are co-owners of Chorley Town. But when I go to the club's own accounts, there's no reference to them. And the club is apparently owned by a company called Reset Events Limited, which is owned by a Mr. Prince Yamo. And then when I start to investigate Reset Events, it's a company that was set up for £1. It's used various methods to avoid ever publishing any accounts.
Oh.
And Reset Events appears to be sort of passing through a bit of a washing machine of owners itself, many of which are companies, and trying to get an overall feel for what is happening is a bit bizarre. So I think Chorley Town, that they last published an article, last submitted a document to Companies House just before Christmas. So surely, if the members of Boyzone, and I'm sure they went on Irish TV and it was all a big thing at the time, I'm just a little bit surprised that there's been no progress made in terms of the allocation of ownership. And I'm just a little bit more concerned than I was when I first started to research this particular topic about Chorley Town itself. A lot of money has gone into the club historically. It doesn't appear to have gone from the Prince Yamo. And when there's lots of companies involved and they all seem to be using a brass plate address for probably a firm of accountants in Liverpool. So it appears on one of them. And it's actually quite close to my apartment, so I might pop down and investigate once I finish this and take a look at things a little bit closer. It's a weird one, very weird.
That pop down and investigate sounded a bit sinister, Kieran. Sounded a bit like Uncle Terry popping down to investigate something. I'm intrigued by this notion, Kieran, of using various methods to avoid publishing accounts, because I would have thought there's only one method, and that's just by not publishing them. So what are some of these other methods that you can use to avoid?
Well, you can extend your year end. So that they did publish one set, and they said it was a dormant company, Reset Events, which I find a bit strange if they are controlling Chorley Sporting Limited. So just all a bit weird. And if you extend your year end by 6 months, in theory, you can extend when you have to publish your accounts, and then you don't publish them on time, and you take the fine instead of publishing. Yeah, yabba yabba yabba. There are. If we take a look at Derby County, for example, they just said we're going to pay the fine and we're not going to publish, and then of course Mel Morris put the club into administration. So something's not quite good.
Right, okay.
I'm not saying it's bad, but it just doesn't add up.
All right, so this might be one of those rare occasions when a question gets shunted maybe to the news pod in the next couple of weeks, because as we investigate further into what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I hope I've picked up the complete wrong end of the stick here, but
right.
For what is a relatively small business, to having so many changes of directors, so having so many companies coming in as directors, and then you sort of do the audit trail and you try to trace back and you sort of hit a few dead ends it's never good for if you believe in transparency. And I'm a big advocate of transparency when it comes to football, because it is our national. It's more than our national sport. It's it's our national obsession in many regards, and perhaps it's too much of an obsession at times.
Well, if anyone from Westlife and Boyzone want to come onto the show, Kieran, I'd be only too happy to. I was going to say to listen to them. That'd be wrong. But talk to them would be the correct thing. If anybody out there from Chorley wants to reassure us, then we'd only be too happy to be reassured and pass that on to Chorley fans, obviously. Now, Steve Horner has our next question, Kieran. It's one of those weird questions. Every now and again, Kieran, a question comes along and you say, I don't know whether this is genius or they're taking the piss, basically.
Yes.
This is very much on the borderline of genius and taking the piss from Steve Horn. Steve quite rightly says, firstly, let me apologise to the Baroness if this question allows Kieran to go deep into accounts. But I was just wondering how much a football club would actually make if it didn't have any players. Brackets.
Yes.
And he says himself, in brackets, stupid, I know. Or genius, Steve, we don't know. Take my club, says Steve. Take my club, Sheffield Wednesday, for example. If we didn't have to buy players, pay their wages, and everything attached to owning them, then how much would the club actually taking into account general costs of running a club? I only ask because I find it ridiculous that clubs spend so much on players instead of cutting their cloth accordingly. Well, first of all, Kieran, I would say to Steve that, without players, I think your match day income might go down a little bit. I would guess you will make savings elsewhere. Of course you would. But so, genius or taking the piss, Kieran?
Well, thank you, Steve, for this question. I picked up the email from producer Guy, and to make my not great Saturday even worse, I was a bit disorganised last week. I managed to book myself 2 return tickets to Nottingham, so it cost me £157 in rail fares. So I picked this up, and I carried on, and I was working so hard on this, I managed to miss match of the day on Saturday night.
Well, that's handy.
So I'm actually grateful to Steve for setting this question. The Baroness was less impressed. So I put the numbers into the spreadsheet, and it works out. If we take 22-23, which is the last season, for which we have full data, as far as the Premier League was concerned, the average losses were £1.2 million a week in the Premier League. And this is something which I think flies under the radar. Has to be said, a lot of those losses were due to Chelsea. And a lot of those losses were due to interest costs at Manchester United as well. If you remove player costs and you're effectively just going to matches to watch the grass grow, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing compared to some of the alternatives, which you might have to end up watching, it goes from a loss of £1.2 million a week to a profit of £3.5 million. So effectively saying your player costs are on average £4.7 million per week.
Per week?
If we drop down to a week.
A week?
Yeah.
Holy.
If you think about it, you got players on 300 grand.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, of course, yeah.
So it's not.
Yeah.
If we then turn our attention to the Championship and Steve's club, Sheffield Wednesday, the average losses in the Championship are £382,000 a week. And you go, well, that's an awful, I'm not being rude here, that's an awful lot of money for Middlesbrough at home on a Tuesday night.
Yeah.
At least in the Premier League, you say, well, we've got Chelsea coming, we've got Manchester United coming, we've got Liverpool coming to town, and everybody still gets a little bit excited when the big clubs come to town. If you remove the players, that negative £382,000 a week, Steve, comes to a profit of £225,000 a week. I know that the Sheffield Wednesday owner, Dejan Chansiri, did a recent meeting with fans. I think it's fair to say it wasn't an unqualified success by a long chalk. I think there was a bit of conflict. But I'm just glad that this question came in after that, because it might have been one of the maverick ideas, shall we say, that Mr. Chansiri has come up with during his tenure to actually get rid of all player costs and try to recoup some of the money, which has very much gone down the sink at Sheffield Wednesday due to a variety of reasons. So that is the answer. It's an intriguing one. It allows me to go into spreadsheet heaven for a few hours. So I'm very grateful.
So what you're saying is, Kieran, after 5.5 years, I was going to say 5.5 odd years, but 5 of them weren't odd. They'd be quite pleasant, to be perfectly honest. But after 5.5 years, Steve Horn has actually found a way to solve all the problems of football financially, and that is take the players out of the equation, and every single club will be in a profit. Well, there you are.
Sorted, mate.
I don't know what to do with that information. Talking of giving money accidentally, Kieran, as you did to the railway company,
Yes.
You may be aware, listeners, that there's a bit of noise occurring in the background. It's because this is Monday. Since Friday, we haven't had any hot water or heating because our boiler went. And the lovely engineer, very nice man, which I'm saying because he can clearly hear me, is back for the 3rd time in an attempt to fix it. I think because I haven't fully funded his summer holiday yet. So he just needs to top up his holiday fund by coming around and doing something else to my boiler, because we're on the third and final part it could possibly be. So I'm hoping so, because the novelty of being really cold is when you're going outside to warm up, Kieran, it's not a good thing. John Davis has our next question, and for personal reasons, Kieran, I'm really interested in the answer to this question. I wonder if there is a standard answer. As John Davis said, what is the typical amount of donations as a percentage of revenue that parent clubs typically give to their community club organisations or foundations?
Yeah, I don't think that there is a set amount, as you rightly said there, Kevin. But I went to take a look at the accounts of Everton in the community, and the reason why I do that is, I've mentioned on many occasions the fantastic work they do.
Yeah,
living now in the city of Liverpool as well as working there, and they put in around about £500,000 in goods and services, also the time of staff. If you then take a look at the other funds, there are some very generous benefactors to individual foundations. The Premier League also contribute, and the Premier League comes in for a lot of stick, but the Premier League does contribute. And remember, your losses that you make in your foundation are excluded from PSR, so they want to encourage investment in the local community as well as investment in players and so on. So it's I think as a percentage, it does very much vary. The work that these foundations do is absolutely amazing because they've got the power of the badge. If I go into a group of young people, and I've worked for a charity called Young Enterprise, which is trying to make young people aware of the world of business. It's a bit square, but it's very well meaning, and I'm going in from potentially, or people going. I don't do very much these days, from year 1 to year 12, and some of the places you do visit, you realise that how detached I've become from my roots. It's substantially different from growing up in the Elephant Castle in the 1960s, which was very much sort of a working class Irish and working class ethnic background. I have become gentrified, and it's sometimes it's good to have a reset. But if I go in, I'm a teetotal chartered accountant who works at university, and I'm dealing with family. I'm dealing with children from families where they don't have a book in the house.
Yeah.
And how do you make a connection? So it's actually very, very difficult. And you're there. They're all on their phones doing TikTok. There's arms folded. You might get one or two queries. I'm trying to say, education is transformational.
Yeah,
education
of course.
can certainly, from my own point of view, as the first person in my family to go to university, I know the difference it's made to my life and the improvements. Getting that across is a real barrier. If somebody comes in from Everton Football Club and they've got that, they're wearing the tracksuit, and the first thing they said, I'm from Everton in the community. How many of you Reds? How many of you Blues?
Yeah.
How many of you support Tranmere? You've instantly started a conversation. And through conversation, you build up relationships, and through relationships, you build up trust. So those young people in particular, whose lives are in danger of going onto the wrong side, I'll say no more than that, dysfunctional, truancy, their education suffers, we've got literacy issues and so on, then the work that these community schemes are doing is absolutely fantastic. And that's all leveraging off the power of football because it's something which kids are interested in. So the work that they do is absolutely brilliant. And for every £1 that gets spent, you're getting £9 worth of social good. And this is sort of it's going to make me sound terribly woke or something like that, but it's in terms of improving lives, improving health, improving life expectancy, in reducing criminality, reducing unemployment, reducing mental health issues. It really is absolutely amazing what these schemes do.
Well, and occasionally you take a kid into London from Croydon, because it turns out something like 38% of under 18-year-olds in Croydon have never been to London. So occasionally
that's staggering.
It's incredible. Because there's no reason for them to go. They haven't got jobs in there. They're associated with authority. But I've witnessed it firsthand, Kieran, that how a classroom suddenly. I go into a classroom as part of the Crystal Palace Foundation. To the kids, it looks like I'm there to check up on the teachers, basically. Essentially, to the teachers, it looks like I'm there to check up on the teachers. Then one of our young coaches comes in, and the kids perk up a little bit because they're in a tracksuit, and it's got the eagle on the front. And then if one of the players comes in, Kieran, either from the men's team or the women's team, oh my God, it's just incredible. I mean, it takes 5 minutes to calm them down. But once they're calmed down, they just hang on every word that the players have to say, and it's an astonishing thing. But you mentioned the amount of money the Premier League give to foundations. Unfortunately, it's become so substantial that relegation for a foundation at a club is a disaster, to the extent that the Premier League are now doing a kind of parachute payment, because they realise that losing that huge Premier League donation in one hit is an awful blow to foundations. And also, you mentioned goods and services. It's like, if you looked at the amount of money that Crystal Palace Parent Club actually gives to the foundation, in terms of cash, it's not that much money, but they allow us to use a substantial part of the building as offices for free. So over the course of the year, we have a suite of offices that would cost us a fortune, which Palace are allowing us to use for nothing. So that means we're able to run from the club, and it's interesting that there isn't a prescribed amount in the Premier League handbook that clubs should be giving to foundations. But that's a good question, John. Thank you so much.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay. Things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Hey Atlanta, Apple is open for small business. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. With privacy and security built in on all devices, it's easy for you to protect your customers' data. And if you need hardware or software support, you'll get advice from business experts at no cost whatsoever. So you can focus more on the soup du jour and less on, the other stuff. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
Mark Collins has our next question. Mark says, with so many lower league and grassroots teams struggling, I wonder if a transfer levy of, say, 5% could be imposed on all Premier League and Championship teams to create a central fund. This could be used to give cheap loans and grants to clubs outside the top two divisions for spending on infrastructure, youth development, women's football, community projects, and so on. It seems to me it would be a fair way of funding, as the rich would pay the most, and it could be excluded from FFP to avoid one of the obvious complaints. I'm afraid, Mark, that one of the obvious complaints would come from the rich who are paying the most. But this is something that comes up occasionally, Kieran, just the idea of a benevolent fund, the idea that when some clubs are struggling and could go out of business for the sake of 30,000 quid, why isn't there a central fund where they could get that 30,000 quid on the strict proviso that it has to be paid back within a year, 2 years, 3 years?
Yep. I absolutely understand that. At present, clubs do pay a 4% levy on transfers. And that money goes into the players' pension fund and players' youth funds. So to add on to that, I think would not necessarily be in the best interests of Premier League clubs. It is the flagship football competition in the world, and it's a case of striking balance. Certainly, it was one of the suggestions that was given to the government when the draft was taking place of the IFR, the Independent Football Regulator rules, and it was rejected, and I think it was appropriate to reject it as well. We're not trying to impose costs as far as clubs are concerned. Having said that, the biggest beneficiary of the success of the Premier League has not been executives, has not been owners, has not been players, has not been agents. It's been the gambling industry. And there is a levy, as we know, the tote levy on bets placed on horse racing. If I was watching some of the football over the weekend, yesterday, of course, and it was noticeable the number of advertisements from the gambling industry. So the gambling industry has done spectacularly well, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think they could be putting a bit more back through having a levy which goes into these community schemes. It does appear that the gambling industry has the ear of many people in high power, and they are very persuasive when anything as communist as my suggestion is put to those people in high power. But it's certainly it's a way of not taking money out of football. If you one of the things I really notice about adverts in the gambling industry, and I did gamble on the result on Saturday, and you know which way I gambled as well. So I've got absolutely nothing against the central tenet of the industry, but it is a major beneficiary of the success of football. You've only got to every advert's a football advert. You don't see racing, you don't see gambling adverts for horse racing or for cricket these days. It's all relating to football, because football has become the preeminent element, and also football is therefore, to a certain extent, has become the gateway drug. The books that the gambling companies have, you get pretty good odds because there is a lot of competition, and you've got the aggregators who compare the odds. So they try to get you in, and then where they really make their money is on the free spins, on the bingo, and so on, where it's very much fixed odds in favour of those who have the book.
Yeah, they try and make you do a gaffer of an
a
gaffer of an acca, which really annoys me because it's a terrible. It's not a rhyme. It's not even an asin. It's a gaffer of an acca, because so many people who start betting, for some reason, it takes them quite some time to work out that trying to pick 4 winners is much harder than trying to pick 1 winner. In that glorious window of opportunity for the bookies, they're throwing a lot of money at it. We say this every time we talk about that situation. The horse racing industry takes a massive levy from gambling. If the gamblers don't want to pay the levy, they don't get the information on who's running in the races. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And the other thing as well is that the idea of a benefit fund, if you want, a welfare fund, is that right back at the start of the pod when we were talking about Bury, and Bury could have been saved for the sake of about £90,000, which Everton were going to pay. Bill Kenwright, God rest his soul, was happy to pay that, and he was prevented because it was a conflict of interests. But there are plenty of people we spoke to, Kieran, who said that if you had a welfare fund, then clubs would start to rely on it, and they would take business risks. They wouldn't have a sensible business plan because they knew that if the worst came to the worst, the backup was there, and it was going to be so. Which romantically is not good, but if you're treating football as a business, which so many people do, then you can see that logic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm almost reluctant to ask this question from Tom Hancock, Kieran, because the answer could be very long if you were to answer this properly in detail. But the second part of it, I think, is very much worth discussing. Tom Hancock's question says, is it possible to produce an overview for all 20 Premier League clubs showing where each club stands in reference to the £105 million limit for profit and sustainability? Well, I'm going to suggest, Ken, if it's a weekend and the Baroness is at home, then no, it's not possible to do that, I would guess. But also, says Tom, why is this information not released by the Premier League, given all clubs have to publicly release financial statements via Companies House. So I think there's something in that. Why don't we know at any given time, in the same way that in Hogwarts, you know how many points each house has at any given time? Why don't we know where a football club stands currently in relation to PSR? Because as we discussed about Man United last week, their sudden declaration that they were in grave danger of breaching PSR regulations came as a shock to a lot of people.
Yes.
I recognise that look.
I'll answer that second question.
I've asked a stupid question, haven't I? I know that.
No, you've asked a really good question. It's commercially sensitive. If you genuinely know that Club X is £12 million over the PSR limit, and they've got a player to sell, let's for the sake of argument, it's an academy player, so it's pure profit, and you're actually willing to offer, you reckon he's probably worth 15 to 20 million, you'll offer 12.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so it would be exploited. So it's private information, it's commercially sensitive information, and there's a lot of guesswork involved. In terms of Tom's first question, is it possible to produce an overview? I've got to say, Tom, our very good friend, and I am the biggest fan of this person on the planet, the Swiss Ramble, has written an absolutely magnificent article going through club by club in incredible detail. So go to Swiss's Substack. It'll cost you £5 for a month. You are getting £25,000 worth of management consultancy.
Wow.
It's an absolutely, and his work's brilliant, full stop. But this is off the scale in terms of, I know how much work you have to do to put this stuff together, I have limited hours free, given I'm working for the university and various other people as well on top of this. But this is a piece of work which will have taken ages and ages to put together, and it's an absolutely brilliant read. I would encourage every one of our listeners to, even if you're just subscribing for 1 month, but I subscribe on a long-term basis. He does brilliant work. He's got brilliant taste in music. And he's an all-round good guy. So take a look at his Substack, and sort of just going to individual clubs. By the way, he rightly identified that Manchester United were fairly close to the limit, but Manchester United have signed 2 players in the last 48 hours.
Yeah.
And they've already spent £219 million in the current window, and they've also got the costs of sacking one manager and replacing him with another, which doesn't appear to have moved the dial. Surprise, surprise. Recruiting Dan Ashworth and sacking Dan Ashworth, which doesn't appear to have moved the dial. And there's no surprise in this when you hear about some of the other things about the way that the club's being run. So Manchester United are very close to the limit. Chelsea are reliant upon the sale of real estate to be within the limits. The other ones who are close, Forest, Newcastle, and we know that they've expressed their concerns. As far as Palace were concerned, Palace are fine. They've got flexibility to recruit. Villa, pretty close to the limit. Manchester City, why have they been able to spend as much money as they have? Because they've made money. They've been making profits the last couple of years. West Ham in a very strong position, as are Spurs, as you'd expect them to be. So there's many clubs in a very strong PSR limit. But what I would say, and I always try to remind people, it's a limit, not a target. It's the same as a credit card. You don't get a prize on your Visa or your MasterCard or your Amex card or whatever it's going to be. If you've got £20,000 in it, you spend £20,000 in it, they don't come and pat you on the back. Yeah, it's still so. And remember, these are losses that we're talking about. They're not profitable items. They're loss making by definition.
Yeah. If you're listening, Swiss, what I will say is I fully expect the first 5 minutes of your next pod to be an extended plug for the Price of Football Club, basically. Consider we've now driven so much business towards it. What is it with you football finance experts that you know everything there is to know about how to save a club financially, but you undercharge the world for your services? You're too good, the pair of you. You're too good. I'll keep saying that. I don't know which of you should get the bigger statue, but you're too good.
The new year is the perfect time to start fresh. So why not make it delicious? Start your day with Bob's Red Mill 100% whole grain oats. One simple ingredient with endless possibilities. Whether you're a sweetness savorer or a good health guru, with Bob's Red Mill, you can have a naturally delicious breakfast made your way. So savor your mornings with premium oats, perfected by nature and made to be shared. No matter how you top your oats, you're always welcome at our table. Look for Bob's Red Mill oats in the blue bag.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Clive Burgess has this question, a very simple one, Kieran, but again, it could be a long answer. Which clubs in the 92 consistently make a profit?
Consistently, I've been through my long list, and on the roll call of honour, and I'm using the word consistently. So those clubs that have made spectacular profits on occasion through the sale of a couple of players, I'm going to exclude. But the ones who are on my roll of honour, step forward, Stevenage. Step forward, Walsall. Brilliant. Rotherham, Exeter City, and Burton Albion. Those are the ones. And in Scotland, Celtic are brilliant at making money as well.
Wow.
So, clubs which go under the radar. Clubs, and notice all of those clubs, Kevin, clubs that never get a mention on the Price of Football podcast.
Absolutely so. Well, the only time we ever mention Exeter is in relation to fan-owned clubs. Exactly. Essentially, and Rotherham occasionally, because you always say they run their finances well. But I would have gone for Stevenage in a million years. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And are these deliberate policies by these clubs, or do they just happen to be run by clever people?
They set a budget. They stick to a budget.
Right.
And I go onto the message boards of most clubs just to have a nosy when I'm researching a topic, and there are grumbles from some of them, but at other clubs, if the club is good at communication, if the club is good at engagement, the fans actually buy into this. We remember when we went to Accrington Stanley, and Andy Holt. Andy is a man of strong opinions.
Yeah.
But he will also say, if you don't like what I'm doing, come and meet me after a match. We'll have a chat in the bar, and we'll discuss. And if we agree to disagree, then fine. There's no grudges. So if you treat people as adults, if you say, I don't have millions upon millions of pounds to spaff on this football club, but what I am going to try to do is to make sure that it's going to be here in 5 years, it's going to be here in 10 years, it's going to be in 20. And if somebody else comes in who wants to spend more money than I, and I genuinely believe, and this person has proven themselves to have resources and will spend those resources wisely, I'm more than happy to move on. Then I think fans are adult enough to realise that actually the most important thing about being a fan of Burton Albion is the community part, is the fact that it's a family activity, and you're never going to win the Premier League. So what's wrong with just sort of trying to break even? I remember Burton when they were non-league, so they've done really well for themselves.
I think Gary Neville would be slightly surprised to hear you say Andy Holt doesn't bear grudges, Kieran. So we've already had Steve Horn coming up with the magic solution to football finances, which is to get rid of the players. And now you have another radical left field solution, which is set a reasonable, sustainable budget and stay within it.
Yes.
Oh, blimey, we're learning a lot today. Our penultimate question, Kieran, comes from Chris G. And Chris says, what is the average break-even point as a percentage of matchday income across the leagues? I
was a little bit confused by this, Chris. If you meant that how much money do we get from match day? In the Premier League, it's about £1 in every 7 comes through match day. That goes up to about £1 in every 5 in the Championship. And by the time you get to League 2, it's up to around about 40% of your total. So that's sort of to give it a broad. In terms of break-even point as a percentage of match day income, it's pretty horrendous. If we were to just rely on match day income to fund clubs, what would happen is that your match day income in the Premier League would have to increase by about 11 times the amount we're currently paying for a ticket.
Wow.
So it's not, for all of the folly that comes with the broadcast industry and its relationship with football in terms of kickoff times being moved, in terms of shifting things around, in terms of the Disneyfication of the game, the increase in half-time. It used to be 5 minutes, didn't it, for half-time? Now it's now it's effectively 20 minutes to allow pundits and broadcasters. For all of that, it is providing the vast majority of funding that we're seeing in football, and it's also pretty damn good service on top of that as well.
Yeah. Matt Bradley has our last question. And Matt Bradley says, with the NFL season coming to an end, although it's quite likely this is last year's NFL season coming to an end, given our waiting list, with the NFL season coming to an end, it got me thinking about player contracts. In the NFL, contracts are regularly set to pay the player different amounts each year. So if someone signs a 5-year contract for $100 million, it wouldn't be structured at £20 million a year, but could be $10 million in year 1, $15 million year 2, $20 million year 3, $25 million year 5, and $30 in year 5 as well, paid at the end. While it wouldn't need to be done for every player, surely this sort of structure could help football clubs navigate PSR with their higher earners. So it is amortisation, Kieran, but just not regular amounts.
Yes, I mean, if you take a look at a player's contract, there are contractual obligations for step-ups on a season-by-season basis. Probably not to this extent. If you take a look at it from the perspective of the player, if I'm only getting $5 million now and getting 25 in 5 years' time, well, I'm effectively subsidising the club. And I could, with the extra money, I could be using that to buy property. I could be putting it into my pension scheme. I could be using that to support my family. So I think there would be a reluctance on players. And there's also a trust issue. Quite a few football clubs have gone into administration. Frankly, not as often as it used to be the case.
Yeah.
But what happens if you were a player, and it's even happened in the Premier League when Portsmouth went into administration. So if I was advising a player on such a deal, I would express caution. And then you've got the issue of, from the club's point of view, the club now has an incentive to sell the player after 2 or 3 years of the contract, so they avoid having to pay them the higher match. So I think there would be it was a classic example here, and the Premier League's very fond of this phrase, unintended consequences, and it would change things. Are there other ways around it? Well, if you've got a player who's a very, very good player and they are getting towards the end of their contract, and let's say they wanted £30 million over 2 years, could you come up with a deal which pays them for 2 years as a player, and then 2 years, a very, very generous sum of money to be an ambassador for the club? That might be more attractive. But again, I think that would probably only work at the elite end of football. And for the smaller clubs, it wouldn't be in the players' interests, and then you've got some player who's sort of sticking around the town for a couple of years, sort of purely just to pick up money on a Saturday, not playing, and it's, at the end of their career they might be wanting to do other things.
Yeah, I'm slightly disappointed, Kieran. I've been trying to find all the way through this pod some kind of way of crowbarring in, robbing the rich to pay the poor type thing, which would lead me to Robin Hood and then to you know where. But I just haven't been able to do it, Kieran, to the extent that I've had to boldly say it at the end. That will be the last reference to. Sorry, that's the first time I've genuinely laughed in about 3 months. Don't forget, you can now join our Price of Football Club, where you'll get ad-free listening, bonus episodes, and more. I wonder if Swiss Rambles, do you think Swiss Rambles joined up? He can afford it. Let's just go to Price of Football. Just go to priceoffootball.com and click on Join the Club to sign up today. One important thing to be aware of is if you're one of our wonderful Patreon subscribers, your membership will not transfer over automatically if you sign up to the new club. You'll need to cancel your Patreon subscription and set up a new one using the link on the website. We'll turn off our Patreon offering at the end of February. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on X and you can find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy our book, you can find details on our website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back in a day or so with a bonus interview for our Price of Football Club members. Not a bonus interview, you can get it otherwise, but it'll be out on Friday, but it will be out on Tuesday or Wednesday if you're a member of the club. And it's an interview with Dan Hunt, who's one of the founders of Spirit of 69, the people who are trying to get basically some resolution of the ownership issues at Swindon Town. Otherwise, we'll be back on Thursday with our regular news pod and all the news about the transfer window. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Thanks, as always, for everybody who was concerned about my welfare at the weekend. It was very touching. I even met a couple of Forest fans on the train on the way back, and they were brilliant because all they wanted to do was talking about football finance. They didn't. They were so gracious about. They didn't want to talk about the match itself, and it was very, very kind of them. As Kevin said, we're looking forward to talking to our friends from Swindon, if you want to support the club, Price of Football Club, we had great fun with the live audience last week, and we're looking forward to that, doing that on a monthly basis as well, and all of the other benefits, no adverts and so on. But there's another way you can support the club, and that helps us because it's algorithms, and the world is all about algorithms these days. And that's to give us a review, write something, doesn't matter what you'd want, and in honour of the fact that we're talking to the Spirit of 69, you could even say you would rather have the show presented by Brian Adams and Officer Dibble from the greatest cartoon show of all time, Top Cat, and I'd be perfectly relaxed about that.
How did Officer Dibble get that job? What recruitment process did he go through when on a weekly basis he was outflanked by cats? I had in a pub in Earlsfield on Saturday afternoon, Kieran, after I'd missed a Wimbledon game but was meeting some friends who were Wimbledon and Palace fans. I had quite a few people, again, fans of the pod, who came up to me to talk about you, Kieran, but mainly about the air fryer. You won't be surprised to learn, Kieran, all these people in Earlsfield, Wimbledon, were very, very full. Of course, he's baffled that I didn't have an air fryer. I said, yes, because I like cooking. So anyway, it all got a bit hairy. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.